Hi everyone, it's Lynn, D&L Create. So today's project, I'm starting with this piece of wood. It is about 22 inches long. And I went down about 6 inches and I taped it off and used red acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree to cover the bottom portion. And this paint is called red oxide. It kind of has a barn red tone to it. And I did just give this one coat, painting the front and the sides. And then once it was all painted, I did go in with a paper towel and I kind of wiped back some of that excess. I put that aside to dry, and then I took these 3 spindles and I sanded them. And on the back, see here, it's flat. So I made sure to get that pretty good because when you glue these down, I feel like if it's an unpainted and an unfinished surface, it kind of holds better. When I finished sanding those 3, I went on to sand another spindle quite a bit smaller than those 3. Now I'm going to take some Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and paint all 4 of these. I did only give each of these spindles one coat, but I didn't go real heavy on it because I am going to distress these anyway. So it didn't really bother me if a little bit of that wood showed through. I also used that white chalk paint to cover a wood star. Now that the red portion of my board is dry, I am going to use that painter's tape again to cover up that red edge so I can paint the top portion blue. And I'm doing that with Folk Art acrylic paint in the color navy. And I did the same thing, the top and the edges, and then I took a paper towel and wiped back all of the excess. Now I am going to paint some wood letters. So I put a piece of tape on my surface, sticky side up, and I put the letters on top of it, and that'll hold them in place while I paint them with that same acrylic paint that I used on the board. And I did also use a paper towel to wipe back some of that excess. And then this is also a good trick for drying your letters because they'll stay in place and they won't blow all over the place. Now that all of that painting is done, I am going to distress those spindles. And I'm using a gator sander here. I got mine at Walmart. They do have these in different sizes, but I like the small one because it's a little bit easier to handle. And it's kind of flexible, so it gets into the grooves in those spindles pretty well. And the star was on natural wood, so there was no dark to show through if I sanded it. So I used Waverly Antique Wax on a pot scrubber, and I just went over the edges and the front of it. And this way it'll match the spindles. And I also sanded the letters to distress those a bit. Now I am going to distress the board a little bit. So I used that same gator sander and I went around the edges, and I did wipe all that residue off as I went, and I did the front as well and got some of that wood grain to show through. The next thing I did was I found the center of my board right where the 2 colors meet, and I marked it with a pencil. And I took that smaller spindle because it didn't go from one end all the way to the other, so I wanted to make sure it was centered. I used some wood glue. This is wood hot glue that I got from Dollar General. And I put that on the back of it. And then I lined up the center of the spindle with the mark I made on the board. And then I went ahead and I attached the other 3 spindles. And this was easy to space out because that spindle that goes across has like grooves in it. And I just lined them up the same on each side. Next, I glued down my star. And I added a Jenga block to the back of it because it was a pretty thin piece of wood and I wanted to give it a little more dimension like these spindles. So then I just added glue to the Jenga block and I glued it right to the center of the blue area. Last thing I did was glue my letters on, and I did use that piece of painter's tape to keep them lined up and level. And I think that this turned out great. I love it. I love the distressed look, but if you don't, then you can just leave it solid colors. But I really do hope you like the project, and I hope you give this one a try. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a great day, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.